Thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. I am your host Nelson here on this Friday afternoon, and today is going to be the last day of the NBA Finals. At least that's what I think. So we're going into Game 4 later tonight. So the first segment is going to be talking about like what I expect to happen in this final game between the Mavericks and the Boston Celtics. Just talk a little bit about how this series has been going, my thoughts about it. If there's things that have surprised me, if things haven't surprised me. Then in the second segment, we are going to be looking at Jimmy Butler and the possibility of him joining the Warriors. Now, it's a possibility. I don't really know how true that is. That's going to be in the future, given how the Miami Heat are with Jimmy Butler, and he's one of the you're not allowed to touch him options for any of the other teams that are in the league. And then in the third segment, we're going to continue our topic on free agency and look at it like this time from the Knicks and their perspective, because the Knicks there was a report that I just saw on my phone saying that the Knicks, they have a lot of plans for this free agency, and they have several other stars on their radar that they're going to try to acquire in the free agency. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. Then in the fourth segment, we are going to talk about a report that I saw saying that Mikal Bridges and the Nets, they don't really seem like that eager to want to trade Mikal, so it doesn't really seem like that's going to be an option in the near future. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about that in the fourth segment. We also have a special fifth segment that I reveal at the end of every single fourth segment, so be sure to stay tuned for when I reveal what the fifth segment is going to be. Before I begin, I like to remind everybody to use the link in the description to get your comments recognized, or the link displayed below the ticker on every single show segment. That is GSMCpodcast.net. It really helps the show, makes the show much more interactive between myself and you guys. And with that out of the way, we can go right into this first discussion and talk a little bit about some of the expectations coming in from this game and coming in, between the Celtics and the Mavericks. I expected the Celtics to be all a very dominant team in the postseason. Like, I was expecting them to make it all the way to the finals, but I did not expect them to be so dominant and so well composed throughout throughout all of the series that they've played in. Like, I knew they were going to make it, but I felt the struggle and the competition was going to the struggle was going to be there, and the competition would have put up a little bit more of a fight against the Celtics. But it seemed like, throughout all of the postseason, it was very smooth sailing. And this just ensures that this team is as good as they were in the regular season. A lot of people were doubting the Celtics in the regular season. They were doubting their roster. They were not sure if Tatum was going to be able to win a championship sooner or later. They were unsure if extending Jaylen Brown to that huge contract extension, making him the most paid athlete in the NBA, wasn't the best move. But it turns out that it was one of the best moves, because now it's like they're sort of him signing that contract that made him the most paid player. It was all worth it in the end, because he immediately answers with winning a championship, and immediately answers by winning an Eastern Conference Finals MVP, and most likely going to be named the Finals MVP going into the at the end of Game 4. It's most likely going to be Jaylen Brown, because no other player on the roster has been performing as consistent as he has throughout the entirety of the NBA Finals. It's like he hasn't had a single bad game in the finals yet. And I mean, even when he was up against Golden State a few years ago, back in 2022, he was also arguably, the best player on the Celtics when Jason Tatum wasn't playing that well. And this is sort of just like a similar story coming in from Jaylen Brown. And, it really begs the question, which of the two is the better player on the team, and which of the two is the more valuable. But like, obviously everyone's going to say it's Tatum, and like, that's going to be the first answer, especially when you can take into consideration the regular season. But so far in the postseason, like, I mean, these two, they had a really good game together finally, but Jaylen Brown has been the most consistent, and he's been the one that's been scoring a lot of the points and like, he hasn't really gotten the all-around numbers that Tatum has had, but in terms of the efficiency and in terms of production, you've gotten the most out of Jaylen Brown. You've gotten more out of him than you have out of Tatum. So I didn't expect this would be how they would end up winning in this series. I expected Tatum to go off in some of these games, and I expected a couple of games to I expected game 3 to be close, and I expected all the other games to like maybe be a little bit close towards the end, but like, towards the fourth quarter, maybe game 2, I felt like game 2 should have been a really close game, but it ended up being a blowout as well. And it's like all of these Kyrie did not play that well in game 1 or game 2, and that sort of surprised me. It's going to be 3 years until it's going to be 3 years and Kyrie has yet to beat Boston. Like, not being able to beat Boston for 3 years is crazy. That is a crazy stat that I found before starting the show, and I really I mean, that is one of those stats that you just cannot make up. That is a very crazy stat that some people follow, and that another crazy stat that was made like during this postseason was the blow by stat that I mentioned before. And again, like, I don't know who calculated that. I don't know when it was calculated, but them introducing that when Luka finally is down in a series is a little bit I think it's a little bit ironic, and it's a little bit odd. Like, were they saving this for when he was going to fail? Like, but aside from his defense in this series, he's been probably the most important piece to the entire Mavericks and their offense. And if it weren't for him fouling out in this previous game, where he ended with 27 points and 6 rebounds and 6 assists, there's a good chance that they could have ended up winning this game. Again, just a chance, not an entire possibility, because this team is just, they are not on the same level as the Boston Celtics, it seems like, because it's like, I mean, the Celtics, they're just better. Like, the team overall is just better, and they don't have to constantly rely on two players just to make all the difference on the team. Like, which is the biggest difference between the Celtics and the Mavericks. Everyone was saying, like, before the finals even started, everyone was talking like, okay, now the Boston Celtics, they have to worry about playing a real team now. Oh, they won't let that fly going up against a real team, because the stipulation going into the finals for the Celtics was that, oh, they have yet to play against a real team. Like, they lose every not they lose, but like they've lost every single time before in the previous seasons, and now it's going to be their time to lose here, because they're going up against a team, because like the teams that they went up against on their road to get to the finals were mostly riddled with injuries. So this would have been like their first time where they played a fully healthy roster. now that the Celtics are whooping them with ease, now the topic is that the Mavericks are really bad. And it's funny how the story completely switches when the Celtics are winning, despite the fact that I felt like the Celtics from the jump were a better team, like, as a whole. Like, not needing to rely on two players for your offense immediately makes you the better offense. And I mean, granted, the Celtics, they do rely on two of their players on offense, but it's not like there aren't other players on the team that could provide for them. For example, one game you had Kristaps Porzingis doing most of the scoring in game one. Then in game two, you had Drew Holiday doing most of the scoring. And then in game three, you have both JT and Jaylen Brown doing most of the scoring. And it's like, this dynamic where it could be several other players' big night is it helps the team be better because you don't have to, as two players being consistent, it's a little bit like at the same time, it's not that easy to ask of someone as opposed to like, maybe one or a few other players that aren't the same players be consistent for a night. It's like, it's not easy. It's not an easy task to ask for. And that's really like the biggest problem with, the offense that I feel like the Mavericks have been struggling with, simply because like, Kyrie's been inconsistent and the rest of the Mavs lineups have also been inconsistent. Relying on two players to run your offense is like, it's really difficult to and it's not something that works on a consistent basis. I mean, Kobe said that kind of style isn't going to win you a championship. James Harden tried it. It didn't work. And LeBron and Kyrie, they almost worked until Kevin Durant completely destroyed them with their team basketball. But they had it working, but it's not easy. I mean, like, asking them to be consistent every night, they were able to do it, but asking it from the other players, it was a much more difficult task. So that's all I have about for you guys in this next segment. So now we will go ahead and go into the second segment where I talk a little bit about Jimmy Butler and the possibilities that he has for this upcoming free agency, because it seems like a lot of teams are really interested in getting Jimmy Butler on their squad. So I will be right back after this short break. Be sure to stay tuned.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits, some losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip, you choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
And we are back with the second segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this second segment, we are going to be talking about Jimmy Butler, the one and only, the man, the myth, the legend of Miami. Everybody's favorite player when the playoffs come. Not my favorite player, though, but we'll talk a little bit about that. But before I begin with the second segment, I'd like to remind everybody to please use the link in the description to get your comments recognized, or the link displayed below the ticker on every single show segment. That is GSMCpodcast.net. Really helps the show, makes the show much more interactive between myself and you guys. And with that out of the way, we can go right ahead and talking about Jimmy Butler and a possibility that could allegedly, according to this article, send shockwaves throughout the NBA. Ooh, scary. Whoa. So we're just going to go ahead and look at this report and see, like, if we think this is possible, if we don't think this is possible. So according to recent reports by Anthony Slater, the Golden State Warriors insider, the Warriors are considering adding Miami Heat star player Jimmy Butler to their roster this summer if the Heat try to trade him. Now, this comes at a huge surprise coming in from the Warriors, in my personal opinion, because I didn't think that the Miami Heat were going to be open into trading Jimmy Butler. But who knows what the future could entail with this team. I know that the Miami Heat, they were really, and with Pat Riley, he was unhappy with Jimmy Butler and how he acted in the off season, and how, when he didn't play, he was saying, if I were to play, the Boston Celtics would have lost. If I would have played, the Knicks would have lost as well. That's all the things that he was, saying in the off season when, his team was losing in these postseason games between the Boston Celtics. And it's like, it's really petty, in my opinion, like what he did, and I wouldn't have done that. I don't think a lot of players would have done that, because it takes like a lot of guts to openly, like, say that on video, like, bro, if I was playing, then I would have beat them. Like, it's a thing that you say to your behind the cameras when there are no cameras on you, but saying it directly in front of the camera, it's not something that you really do. And it's like, it could be seen as cocky, it could be seen as disrespectful. It's also like, I mean, you weren't playing in the game, so it's like, what does it matter? It doesn't change the outcome. So looking deeper into this, or looking and reading more into this report, the Warriors' performance declined after winning the championship in 2021-2022, and in the 2022-2023 offseason, Golden State was eliminated regular season, Golden State was eliminated in round 2 against the Lakers, obviously. And in this last season, they placed even worse, being eliminated during the play-in tournament. Obviously, you guys remember Klay Thompson going 0 for 10 in an elimination game. Nobody seems to forget that. After this defeat, the Warriors, they were planning to improve their roster. So whether that entails... excuse me. It came out of nowhere. Excuse me, guys. But whether that entails, getting rid of Klay Thompson, because it was seen that there's a possibility that Klay Thompson might not want to be with the Warriors this season and test the waters of free agency. So there is that. But adding Butler to the team is considered an excellent move for the Warriors. However, there is increasing concern about Butler's age and performance, as he played fewer than 67 games per year in the 2018-19 season, like since the 2018-19 season. So, in addition, Slater remarks that NBA reporter Nick Friedel gave some insight into the topic during a recent episode of Willard and Dibbs' show, and he mentioned that Butler's name had been discussed during the conversation of the Warriors for the trades. And he says, I think it's a fit on paper, but I'm not sure how he fits into that locker room as the alpha personality that he is, and I don't know if after all the wear and tear on his knees, the Warriors would want to give him that extension, Friedel mentioned. Now, Butler and Cameron Brink, they met last Friday night following the Sparks versus Wings game, and we saw Jimmy Butler all decked up in Sparks attire, trying to impress Cameron Brink. Brink was she's a really big fan of Jimmy Butler, and she was obviously she was obviously really shocked when Jimmy Butler was there all decked out in her gear. And let me just keep looking down. There is a he also hinted at Jimmy Butler, Jimmy Butler also hinted at looking really good in the purple and gold, which obviously struck some some headlines saying, "Oh, is he hinting at joining the Lakers?" Question mark. Ooh, like how all the media people do and what they make of the situation. But I mean, seeing him in the Bay Area is not too far off from either joining the Lakers or joining the Warriors. So it's like the one or the other. And hinting at free agency, it also seems that like maybe his position on the Miami Heat isn't as clear cut and as solid as it seems, because everybody would assume that you keep your best player more than anyone else. You try to keep your best player, but there are times where organizations, they're like, all right, let's get rid of our best player at some point, sometimes. So could be Jimmy Butler, that he ends up, since the experiment with him so far hasn't really been working the way that you want, maybe is the time where you give him up and give him to another team, especially now that he's getting old. But at the same time, I don't think you should, if you're the Miami Heat, in my opinion, I don't think you should try and give this up, because like until he legitimately cannot play, he has been the best chance that the Miami Heat has had at winning a title. It's basically, almost every single year that he's in the postseason, he almost wins, or it's literally just that. He almost wins, or he just gets injured and can't win. So it's a little bit of a weird scenario that Jimmy Butler is in, because it's like we see that he can work in certain scenarios, but like sometimes in other scenarios it doesn't work. And most of the time, like, I mean, we saw him when he was on Philly. If he would have stayed on Philly, then there's a good chance that he would have won a championship. And there's also a good chance that if he doesn't get injured here, or if he doesn't get injured there, or if, he plays better here, that he ends up winning a few more championships. But those are only so it's like these little things that prevent him from winning that, could sway Miami into just keeping him on the roster, which is something that I think, like, I mean, as a GM, I would personally just keep him until his knees give out, or maybe even like a year before you think his knees are going to give out, because you want to ensure that you have the best chances of making it to the finals as you can, and Jimmy is going to be your best chance. So that's basically all I have for this second segment. So with that, we will go ahead and go into the third segment. Excuse me. Where I talk a little bit about the New York Knicks and their free agency, because, the Heat, they aren't the only team going into free agency. So I'll be right after this short break. Be sure to stay tuned, and I'll be right back.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
And we are back with the third segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast, presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this third segment, we are going to be looking at the New York Knicks and their free agency possibilities, because, they were this close to making it all the way to the Eastern Conference Finals. They were this close to bringing some joy to New York. They were this close from all of this and that, and it's just, it's unfortunate the way that it ended, but the Knicks are still trying to improve. Obviously, a team that is really, a few inches closer to making it all the way to the finals is going to make a few more steps to try and push their team all the way. And the GM on the Knicks obviously is going to be trying to do his best to see like what other players he could possibly get. So we have an article coming in talking about the potential in grabbing certain players for free agency that would be a pretty good fit for the New York Knicks. So looking at this report, the first name on the list is friggin' Paul George. So I'm not entirely sure if Paul George is going to want to go to the Knicks on that big market. I think he seems more inclined to want to join Philly and the 76ers as opposed to joining the Knicks. But judging by this report, he would be an ideal fit for the Knicks, but it won't be easy to acquire him if he fails to reach a long-term deal with the Clippers, which Fred Katz writes of The Athletic writes about. And he's 34 years old and obviously expected to sign a max extension if the Clippers are willing to give it to him. I wouldn't expect him to settle for anything less if the Clippers don't give him that max extension that he wants, then I totally see him leaving the team and deciding to try and find a different location to call home, maybe to a team that is going to pay him all that money, because he's expected to make he's eligible for a $221 million extension for 4 years. There we go. That's better English. And he also has a player option. He has a $48.8 million player option for next season that must be picked up by June 29th. But again, it's that really, really big contract that he's going to be looking for and that huge extension deal that he's eligible for. Now, George's three-point shooting, his pick-and-roll skills, and constant movement would help him blend seamlessly with the rest of the New York Knicks roster, according to Katz, and adds that George and OG would become the best pair of perimeter defenders in the league because, one thing about Paul George that is, one thing that is constant about Paul George, aside from his offense, is his really good and reluctant defense. He's known as, for his two-way, he's known for his, two-way tenacity, I guess you could say, and just being a very good ball handler, being a very good shooter, being a very good defender as well. There's almost every facet of his game is arguably considered elite, and again, they would be a pretty good tandem of perimeter defenders. Now, Katz points out that George has a history of playing alongside other stars, and he's a client of CAA, which was formerly run by Knicks president Leon Rose. Now, New York won't have cap space to sign Paul George if he opts out, and the Clippers wouldn't be permitted to sign and trade him because they're above the second apron. So the Knicks would need George to opt in to make a deal possible, and Katz is skeptical that LA would be in a hurry to move him if he's under contract for another season. Sources tell Katz that the Knicks have considered George in the past, but they never made a serious offer to acquire him. That could change if he and the Clippers agree that picking up the option and being traded this summer is the best course of action, at least, according to this article. Sources also tell Katz that the Knicks also have a desire to add Donovan Mitchell into the lineup, which is, it's going to be very interesting, but as you know, there have been reports recently about Donovan Mitchell and the Cavs. They were in talks of signing an extension, and it seems like the Knicks are going to follow up on that. They aren't going to follow. They aren't going to follow up on the Cavs in that offer. Like, that's what I meant to say. That's my bad. So the Knicks, they're only going to offer him if he doesn't sign that extension. If he does end up signing that extension, they're not going to try and counter that with anything. And it's not like they won't lose sleep over it. They'll be like, all right, on to the next. But it doesn't seem like he's not going to be a huge target that, like, if they don't land, then everything is just messed up. If that makes sense. So hold on just 1 second. I'm just looking at more articles that let me see. So next is so aside from getting Donovan Mitchell, despite they were in talks of getting Donovan before the what's it called? Like, before Jalen Brunson sort of became good. So now that he's like as good as the hype sort of entails behind him, there seems to be a little bit of less of a need from the Knicks front office to get another guard and at least a scoring guard. So Mikal Bridges, Karl Anthony Towns, Mikal Bridges, DeJounte Murray, and DeMar DeRozan. That's my bad. Like, they could be potential additions, but it's like, they aren't that. How do I put this? I mean, I wouldn't really consider Mikal a good primary scorer, especially not after this previous season with Brooklyn. DeJounte, he was mainly, with the Hawks, he was a second option as a scorer, and then with DeMar, he's the first, but I mean, you could argue that he's the first option, but you also could argue that he's a second option behind Zach LaVine in being a scoring option. So, but aside from that, it's Mikal Bridges, Karl Anthony Towns, and DeJounte and DeMar that could be potential additions for this New York Knicks team, which would be, honestly, I think out of all of those players, I think Mikal is the best fit, but I'm going to talk a little bit about that in the next segment as opposed to this one, because it does sort of overlap into the next segment that I have planned out. So Cat's sites, it also noted that the Nets have been offered multiple first-round picks for Bridges, but they continue to view him as I'll talk a little bit about that in the next segment. We're getting a little bit too close to exactly what the fourth segment is going to be about. So after the Knicks playoff run ended, members of the Knicks organization expressed confidence about their chances of re-signing both Anunoby and Isaiah Hartenstein, because, since they were winning, it only makes sense that they want to sign these extensions. Now, OG might be a little bit tougher to please because he did have a really good season, so I wouldn't be surprised if he wants to ask for a little bit more money than he has made in the previous year. But there's also some reports that the team expects competition for both players, and they could be outbid for Isaiah Hartenstein, because league rules limit their offer to about $16 million for next season and $72.5 million over 4 years. So this is according to the report, and he also examined the draft and see if it offers any clues about what the Knicks might do with the picks 24 and 25 this year. We still have no idea exactly what New York plans on doing with those picks, and if they're going to, as I like to say, mess up the draft yet again. They have a good history of messing up a bunch of draft picks. I mean, you guys know and remember the infamous Tingus Pingus meme. Tingus Pingus Kristaps Porzingis. He was, drafted by the New York Knicks, and when he was drafted, everybody was upset. All the Knicks fans were completely upset. They had no idea who Kristaps Porzingis was, and somebody who made a video on that, he was like, "Who is this? Who is Tingus Pingus?" And he was that's obviously Kristaps' nickname. It's been his nickname for a while, and he ended up, being not so, like, at the start he wasn't popular, but he ended up being a really good option, but then they decided to get rid of him, and now he is on Boston. But I mean, the Knicks with their draft picks, whatever can go wrong, it will go wrong, and we'll see what they do with their picks in the draft. But with that out of the way, that's the end of the third segment. So now we will go ahead and go into the fourth segment, where we talk a little bit about Mikal Bridges and his future with the Brooklyn Nets, because it seems like he's going to have a long one with them, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that right after this short break, so be sure to stay tuned.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
And we are back with the fourth segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast, presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this fourth segment, we are going to be talking about Mikal Bridges and the Brooklyn Nets. As you guys know, this is one of the teams that I am forced into watching because I am a fan of this team. They're Brooklyn, they used to be New Jersey, and it just, it sounds right for me to be a Nets fan because, just nothing but sadness goes around in all of my sports teams. It fits because, with football, I'm a Giants fan, and it's like there's nothing but sadness there too. And in hockey, I'm the Devils fan, and there's also nothing but sadness in that sport. And it's just like, in baseball now, there's actually a lot of happiness because let's go Yankees. But most of the time, there's just, sadness in every single sport with New York, and this is no different. So here we have an article that is about Mikal Bridges and the possibilities of him getting traded for the Nets. Now, it seems like, at least according to this article, that the Nets have zero interest in trading Mikal Bridges. There's one issue. The Nets have zero interest in trading Mikal Bridges, at least according to this report. According to league sources who have been in contact with them, and it's not like they haven't had opportunities. Other teams have offered hordes of first-rounders. Brooklyn hasn't engaged. According to league sources, Brooklyn's front office has told teams it views Bridges as a co-star to whichever big name it can trade for down the line. That's the organization's long-term plan, though all it takes for the blueprint to change is one hint from Bridges that he wouldn't resign in a couple of seasons. So this is a really bad way to go about this situation, in my opinion, because it's like you're sort of just forcing this player to wait until your team gets good, and you can't really do that for a player. You have to make the team good, and you have to make him good now while he's still there and while he's still happy, because the longer you wait, then the more likely the chances of him wanting to leave the team, they just increase. And you don't want that from an organization. Obviously, if you're the Cavs organization, then you have a lot of history in not keeping your stars happy with LeBron. And this is it's not the same situation, but it's sort of like the same way that the Nets are going about it. And I also don't really agree with this at all. I think he should be traded. If we're getting if the Nets are getting hordes and hordes of draft picks and they're getting really good options for Mikal Bridges, then I would totally take them up. I would totally start looking at offers because he hasn't been the number one option that we were expecting from him. And I also don't really expect him to be a second option on this team after, his performance and his really bad play. I I don't think his time, I think his time as a Brooklyn Net is over. Now, he averaged 19 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists, 1 steal, and 4 blocks while shooting 43% from the field, 37 from 3, and 81 from the free throw line while making $23.3 million next season. And he is one of the top two-way players in the NBA, like, with all due respect. And throughout his career, he's averaged pretty considerable numbers, 14 points. He is also pretty reliable. You know, he's played in almost every single game in since he was drafted. He's considered an Iron Man with how many games that he plays. But, you know, again, with the expectation from Mikal, you know, based off of the first impression that he gave us with Brooklyn, he needed to be that number one option. Like, he was supposed to be the number one option on a, you know, not a good team, a mediocre team, and he was supposed to, you know, be a relatively good leader, but it doesn't really seem like that's the case. And again, moving from Kevin Durant to Mikal Bridges is going to be a huge letdown, no matter how you look at it. But, I mean, at least give us something to look forward to, and that's something that Mikal Bridges didn't do. And that also, like, it seems to ruin the possibility of reuniting the rest of the Villanova brothers and the rest of the Villanova squad to join the Knicks, because, as you know, Dante DiVincenzo, Jalen Brunson, and Josh Hart, they all played on Villanova, and they all played on that championship roster recently. And they're all on the same team now with the Nets. The only person from that Villanova squad that's missing, that's also in the league, is Mikal Bridges. And I've said this before, how Mikal Bridges, and if he were to join the Knicks, if the Nets were to trade him, I wouldn't be upset at that at all. And I also would love to see, like, you know, the picks that we get out of it in return and in exchange for Mikal Bridges, because he is he's a very, very good, he would be a very good piece for the Knicks. And, like, the chemistry that he already has with the rest of the players, it would be jarring. Like, everybody would immediately know like what everyone is supposed to be doing, and it'll be just like playing back in college, which will ultimately ease up a lot of pressure from all of these players. It's like, and on top of that, it's not like Mikal Bridges doesn't have some really good defense to go with, you know, being an offensive minded player. And it's like, he's a really good option to have if you're the Knicks. Again, if you're the Knicks, because you have Jalen Brunson as your number one option, and then you have, you know, you also have DiVincenzo there, as well as, you know, if you were to have Mikal, you have a whole repertoire of little scoring options, I guess you could say. So Houston, they also want to acquire Bridges as well, at least, you know, according to this report. However, Brooklyn has told Houston that Brooklyn has told Houston and other teams that Bridges is not available, so it doesn't really seem like he's going to be on the trade block. League sources say the Rockets have had conversation with the Grizzlies about trading down from this pick, and that the Rockets hold out hope that the Nets would be willing to move Mikal Bridges for it, at least according to NBA insiders. So that's basically all that I have for you guys on this segment. Again, it's a little bit of a shorter segment than usual, but, you know, why would the Nets not want to trade Mikal? I don't understand why not. It's, if you're getting a lot of picks in return, he's not going to be the number one option for the team. Like, that ship has sailed. So just cut the wire with him while we can and get the picks. It's like, I would rather have all of those picks and the possibilities of building a good team more than I would the players. And it's like the players that we have right now. And honestly, you know, a lot of the picks that we would have had and we could have made them into stars. And it's like, it's really just, it's not it. I just don't think that's it. Nets are trying to build around a 27-year-old option, TJ said in the chat. Yeah, exactly. It's like, it doesn't make any sense. And I'm just like, why would we want to build around something so meaningless? when we could build for the future and do literally what the Boston Celtics did when they had our picks. They built for the future, and here they are winning a championship with those same picks that the Nets would have had. But I digress. So with that, we are going to go ahead and go into the final segment, which is going to be about Doc Rivers and and Damian Lillard. I don't know what that word was that I almost invented. And I'm just going to talk a little bit about what Doc had to say about Damian Lillard on a podcast called the Bill Simmons Podcast. So I will be right back after the short break. Be sure to stay tuned. And we are back with the fifth segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this fifth segment, we are going to be looking at this revelation, in air quotes, about Damian Lillard coming from Doc Rivers. Now, that's like the word that they use in the headline. So I'm like a little bit curious as to what the revelation could be. So, I'm just going to go ahead and have a nice little look. The Bucks head coach, Doc Rivers, recently shed some light on Damian Lillard's poor first season in Milwaukee or like Wisconsin, whatever you want to call it. Rivers was asked about Lillard when he appeared on Wednesday's episode of Bill Simmons' podcast. Rivers shared a conversation that he had with the All-Star earlier in the season. The coach revealed that Lillard was in the worst shape of his life, quote, end quote, heading into his first Bucks campaign. We were at dinner, and he said, "Coach, I didn't work out all summer. It's the first time in my life that I've not worked out. I was so scared of getting injured working out. He knew he was going to get traded," Rivers told Simmons. So he said, "I did some light running, I did some shooting with no one in the gym, but I didn't go hard at all. He was honest about it, and that's one of the reasons you love him." He said, "This is the worst shape I've ever been in." Now, he definitely played like that was the worst shape that he's ever been in, because his season with the Bucks, while he did make the All-Star team and he did make the starting roster, a lot of people saw that sort of as just not really out of pity, but it's since there wasn't really much dominant guard play coming in from the Eastern Conference, it was sort of just handed to him, despite the fact that, guards like Trae Young and guards like Jalen Brunson, they were averaging better numbers than him. It was just given to him because of his name and his popularity. So it's it wasn't, a lot of people don't really feel that it was earned. Now, Lillard, he didn't, as I mentioned before, he didn't look like his the same Damian Lillard that was on Portland. He averaged 24 points per game on 42% shooting from the field, 34% from three, and these numbers they were among some of the worst numbers of his entire 12-year career. His final season with Portland, he averaged 32 points, 46% shooting, and 37% from the three, which is, far better production and far better efficiency than he was on Milwaukee. Lillard also faced some personal issues before moving to Milwaukee. He was having marital issues and filed for divorce from his wife of 2 years just days after the trade to the Bucks was official, according to this article coming in about Damian Lillard. So it seems like there were a lot of things that were impeding on Damian Lillard and his success in his first year with the Milwaukee Bucks. Now that maybe this year there won't be any distractions for him going into the NBA season, and there's no distractions like for his future. Maybe this season will be like this upcoming season will be a lot better for him, and it will be it'll just be a better performance, because all of this sort of it definitely makes sense. Like, I mean, if you're moving into a new area and you just lost your wife and you haven't even been working out, you're not in the right frame of mind to sort of be having that effective season that you know that you're capable of having. And with Damian Lillard and all of these things off the court, with all of it happening, it makes sense how his season sort of like unfolded like this. And it's like, I don't really expect anyone to be good when you have all of these off-court things that you have to deal with. If you didn't work out, it makes total sense that you're not going to be in the same shape, and B, you filed for divorce with your wife of 2 years. Now, obviously, both of those are extremely heavy-hitting, and one of those is so heavy-hitting that it could opt other people to retire. Darren Waller. But, aside from that, there's all of those things off of the court. It's like, it really messes with your head, and it could affect how you play. So I'm totally not surprised that this is sort of how he played for this season, given all of the information that we just learned coming from Doc. So it's like, now this next season is going to matter more than ever, because we're expecting a Dame that has no distractions, a Dame that is already used and accustomed to his new environment, a Damian Lillard that is just the better player than he was in this year. And I wouldn't be surprised if that's who we get next year. So that's basically all that I have for talking about Doc Rivers and talking about Damian Lillard. It's going to be one of those shorter segments than usual, and be ready to watch the game later tonight between the Celtics and the Mavericks. I'm pretty sure the Celtics are going to cap off the sweep, and this is going to be the final game of the NBA season. So thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Basketball Podcast, presented by the GSMC Sports Network. Your support means a lot to us, so please remember to subscribe to the show, leave a positive review. It really does make a difference. We also invite you to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram for more content and updates. And as usual, please remember to use the link in the description to get your comments recognized, or the link displayed below the ticker on every single show segment. Really helps the show, makes the show much more interactive between myself and you guys. That is all I have for this show. Thank you once again. I am your host, Nelson, and as always, take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet.